Good evening. My name is Sandro Burgos, hearing officer for San Francisco Public Works. Sharice Waiters is the clerk of this hearing. This hearing is being recorded via Zoom and will be available afterward through a link on the San Francisco Public Works website, sfpublicworks.org. As this is a virtual hearing, there is no sign-in sheet. So if you would like to receive information about the results of this hearing, please send an email to the email address listed on the hearing notice. This public hearing is being held to consider 5 items. Hearing Order 211347 to consider the removal of one street tree without replacement adjacent to 3160 Jackson Street. Tree removal permit number 795116. Staff have approved the removal and the public has protested. Second hearing order number is 211348 to consider the hazard removal of 3 street trees with replacement by owner adjacent to 2655 Bush Street. Tree removal permit 795150. Staff have approved the removals and the public has protested. Third hearing order number is 211349 to consider the removal of 2 street trees without replacement adjacent to 1308 Leavenworth Street. Staff has approved the removal and public has protested. Fourth hearing order number is to consider the removal of 1 street tree without replacement adjacent to 381 Wild Street. Staff approved the removal and the public has protested. The fifth hearing order number for today is 211351 to consider the removal of 3 street trees with replacement adjacent to 50 United Nations Plaza. Staff approved the removals and the public has protested. My job as the hearing officer is to gather the facts of the hearing item, listen to your testimonies, and help our Director of Public Works make determinations. I will not be making any decisions today. Instead, I will forward the findings from this hearing and make my recommendations to the Director. Director will make the final determinations. When the Director's determinations are made, the department will notify you of them if you have provided contact information. The hearing will proceed as follows for the 5 cases. I will ask Public Works staff to speak first and present the case. There is no time limit for this presentation. Then, I will allow the property owner or appellant or applicant to speak. Then, any member of the public or witness who wants to speak. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to speak. The clerk will monitor the time for all speakers and indicate when the speaker has 30 seconds left. If you are a party to this proceeding, I will call on you to speak. If you would like to use visual materials in your presentation, please let me know before you speak. You will then have the standard 3 minutes to provide your comments. If you are a member of the public or witness who wants to speak, wait for me to call for public comments. Then use Zoom's raise your hand feature if you're on a computer to put yourself in the queue to speak. If you are dialing in on your phone, dial *9 to indicate you're raising your hand. When it is your turn to speak, I will recognize you. If on your phone and you're muted, press *6 to unmute yourself. If you would like to use visual materials in your presentation, please let me know before you speak. You will then have the standard 3 minutes to provide your comments. Comments and questions should be addressed to me and not to the department or the applicant. If you cannot finish your comment within the allotted time, you may submit written testimony to me by the end of this hearing. If I feel that a question is warranted, I will ask the question. After all comments are completed, I will close the item. We will now begin the hearing. At this time, we will open the hearing to public comments. Members of the public may make comments on matters that are within the department's jurisdiction, but not on today's agenda. Are there any public comments at this time?
Yes, I have a public comment to read that was sent in from someone. Okay. Okay, this public comment is from Josh Clip. At 13.7%, San Francisco has the smallest urban canopy of any major city in the United States. According to San Francisco Public Works, other major U.S. cities average 25% tree canopy, almost 2 times as much. In 2014, San Francisco issued an urban forest plan that called for the net addition of 2,500 street trees per year. In 2021, San Francisco issued a climate action plan that called for the net addition of 40,000 new trees by 2040. According to the most recent San Francisco Urban Forestry Council report, since 2017, San Francisco has not net gained a single street tree. In fact, San Francisco has net lost more or less than 1,300 street trees. And this loss is set against a backdrop of severe underfunding for the planting and watering of new street trees. There is no money for the street tree planting set aside in the annual city budget. The majority of funding for street tree planting comes from donations, in lieu fees, grants, and Prop K, a fund that is dwindling because it is tied directly to fossil fuel usage in a city increasingly featuring electric vehicles. The city's 2021 Climate Action Plan, a plan drafted in response to the city's 2019 declaration that we are in a climate emergency, also called for a policy of preserving trees for construction and infrastructure improvements, and it called for this policy by 2023. The Climate Action Plan went on to say that in instances where a tree absolutely cannot be preserved, the city should have a policy for basal area replacement. Here we are in 2025, almost 4 years after this Climate Action Plan was released to much fanfare, and not a single city department has embraced this critical Climate Action Plan strategy. Notably, the Climate Action Plan didn't call for these policies because they were just nice to have. It called for these policies because they are a need to have as part of a larger plan for San Francisco's future climate resilience. According to our city's own plans, records, and reports, we are failing ourselves and our future by continuing to remove trees without exploring alternatives, allowing driveways and other ecosystem ruining infrastructure to permanently remove tree planting locations, and we're not coming close to replacing what we're taking out. We live in a world increasingly hell-bent on polluting ourselves to sickness and death. Trees are critical in the fight against this downward spiral, and San Francisco knows this because it took the time to include it in its climate action plan. It's against the backdrop of all this that I hope the department will consider the matters on tonight's agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's the end of the statement.
Thank you, Cerise.
You're welcome.
Are there any other public comments at this time?
Yes, I do see one hand. Just a moment.
Hi, can you hear me? Yes, my name is Michael Nolte, and I wanted to mention that there are other pots of trees besides street trees in San Francisco. There's the Park and Rec, and there's other entities that they don't even have, in some of the cases, they don't even have a, they don't even track their trees, but they remove their trees on a regular basis. So again, we still have other places where we've lost many trees since we started, the city started to be more concerned about trees and tree issues. So there's that issue, plus the fact that San Francisco has now a housing plan where we are going to expect to have more housing in San Francisco, which means a larger population, which again, would mean more air pollution and other such issues when we have a larger population moving into San Francisco because of the 80,000 plus housing units wanting to come into San Francisco. Once these housing units are mandated for San Francisco to be built. So some of these things have to be put in perspective when balancing the needs of the few versus the needs of the many of San Francisco. Also, I want to kind of ask a question. How many times can a tree permit be heard in this form? And doesn't it at some point the tree permit get negated and have to a new permit has to, after a certain amount of time, have to be reestablished under new fees? And I bring that as a pertinent issue for that needs to be addressed at some point. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands at this time.
All right. If there are no more public comments, I will close the item. The item is now closed. The first item on today's agenda is order number 211347. May I have Public Works make its presentation?
Sorry, I was on mute. Good evening. My name is Susan Nawberry. I'm the staff representative for the Bureau of Urban Forestry tonight. So we do have just like very quick preamble, and like we have these strategic objectives, and anybody who's been at these hearings has seen this before, but it's to ensure safe, clean, green infrastructure in the public right of way. We do have a mission to preserve and grow the urban forest, as was stated before, but we are also balancing the safety and needs of a growing and evolving city. So urban forestry is a lot about managing the way a tree grows with how people interact with it. One example is people will say, you know, that tree needs pruning for its health. Well, trees don't need to be cut or pruned for health. What we do is we prune trees for structure and safety so that we can live with them in the public realm. So this is our street tree SF cycle. And we're almost done with the first cycle. We still have like about 30 of these grids left to go, but we did prioritize the highest priority grids, which is the gray areas, and those had the largest trees. But it's coming, they're all coming due again because we're about 8 years into a street tree SF. So some of these haven't been pruned for a while. So you'll start to see the smaller things that were lower priority before are now higher priority currently. So we have a tree ordinance that establishes authorization and standards for addressing a wide range of issues regarding trees, and is codified under Article 16 of the Public Works Code. And so we'll just go into our first order, and it's order 211347, and it's 3160 Jackson Street. And codified under that previously mentioned Article 16 is Article 16, Section 806D. And that gives us authority to require tree planting for construction related projects. So we're considering the removal of one street tree without replacement adjacent to 3160 Jackson Street, and it's under a tree removal permit. And we approved the removal, and the public protested. And several months ago, this same location was before us at a hearing, but it was for a different tree, and we negotiated for a different tree to be removed in order to preserve 2 planting sites. So previously we had denied the removal of one of the trees, and today you'll see that the tree removed this time we approved is the tree in the middle. And that's because like removing the tree on the far left would have basically eliminated that planting site. But then this planting site on the right is too close to the one farthest to the right, and the farthest to the right has. So then you would basically eliminate 2 trees over time. It's not that the project was proposing that, but ultimately this spacing between 2 right trees makes it so that, you know, the removal of the far left tree really necessitates the removal of both. But this time the project agreed to work with us and change the placement of the driveway to this middle tree, which is already suppressed by these 2 trees on the 2 left sides here. So like ultimately, just because this tree is suppressed and not thriving and underneath the canopy of 2 other trees, if this were in worse condition, like we would remove it ourselves, but really it's not harming anything at this moment. But they're actually putting in a driveway here, and we don't normally just outright approve trees for driveways, but this tree is not really a viable spot. You can see that it's suppressed by 2 other trees that have already begun to maximize their size in the right of way. And I say that because these are acacia trees and they're very short-lived. But we've effectively preserved these two planting sites. And the middle site would have already been eliminated even if like the tree were removed for natural causes. So we approved the removal of this middle tree without replacement because there's a driveway, but also it's not replaceable because it's suppressed by these 2 other trees. And so we preserved 2 planting sites. The middle one will be gone. And yeah, you can see here, this is like the old drawing from the previous hearing. And I think that this was a good compromise because the applicant will be able to have the driveway and a series of other improvements that don't trigger our code, but effectively modernize the residents. And then we're not really here to talk about the parking and elimination of parking because that's not our purview at the Bureau of Urban Forestry. That was already reviewed by planning. So I understand that some people may be protesting on that aspect, but by the time this comes to us, that we don't have jurisdiction over that matter. So like I said, or the original application proposed to remove the tree on the left. We denied that. The applicant came back and compromised and removed the tree in the middle. So we preserved 2 trees, tree planting sites long-term. All 3 of these trees they're acacias, and this is an older photo. It just had a better angle. But they all have pretty weakly attached branches. They're all in pretty poor condition. So we're not fighting necessarily for these exact trees, but we're fighting to preserve planting spots. And this middle one has just never been a viable planting spot. So that's why we approved the removal of this middle tree. And the applicant will have to pay an in lieu fee for the loss of the tree. However, you know, we get a lot of in lieu fees. This is just demonstrating that a lot of the other trees have mechanical damage from having poor structure overhanging the road. We get a lot of in lieu fees from construction projects. And one thing we're noticing in District 2 here in the Pacific Heights area, there isn't as much sidewalk landscaping. So in lieu of, we also equate 75 square feet of sidewalk landscaping to an in lieu fee. And so we're offering that instead of the in lieu fee, if the applicant desires or is willing, that they expand the sidewalk landscaping, the basins to make sidewalk landscaping. And that would dramatically increase the permeability in the area, and it also promote better growth for the remaining 2 trees. But it's not a mandatory thing, but it would be if the applicant wanted to avoid paying the in lieu fee. Otherwise, this tree in the middle appraised for well below the in lieu fee, but we don't ever assess less than the in lieu fee. So the applicant will pay the in lieu fee for that loss of the middle tree. And then if they so choose to do sidewalk landscaping, they could avoid paying that in lieu fee. And it's a 25-foot frontage, and they have the required number of trees for that, so we're not assessing any additional trees. That's the case for 3160 Jackson. Unless you have any questions for me, you can move on to the applicant.
Thank you, Susan. Is the applicant or appellant here to speak? You'll have 3 minutes to make your presentation.
Hello, can you hear me? My name is Stephen Sutro.
Yes, we can hear you, Stephen.
Thank you. With me is a colleague named John Simonek who has a PDF to share for this item. Would that be okay?
Yes.
Yes,
Uh,
give me just a moment and I will promote him to panelist.
Thank you.
Did you want to be promoted to panelist as well, Stephen, or you're just going to speak, or you're each going to take a turn? How are you going to do it?
I will do all the speaking and John will do all of the display, if that's okay.
Okay. Okay,
Okay, can you all see my screen? Are we good?
Yes, it's coming up.
it's coming up, yes.
Right.
There we go. Thank you. Okay, as I said, my name is Stephen Sutro. I'm the architect for this project. With me today on Zoom are Justine and Brandon Van Buren, who are the owners of the property, and they are rebuilding this historic house for their family of 5. The project is before you because the historic house needs a new foundation to replace the brick one. It is also the only block on the block face that has not previously added a garage. Justine and Brandon are embarking on rehabilitating this home to move their family, including 3 young children. A safe foundation and a garage for cars, bikes, and strollers is very important to the success of the projects so that it is safe and functional. As Ms. Nawberry mentioned, we were at a street tree hearing for this project in June of last year. In this hearing, the Bureau recommended the removal of street tree number 2 in the middle. In response, Justine and Brandon agreed to modify the design and engineering of the project to accommodate the recommendation. This was quite costly to do. It involves structural and shoring engineering design changes, as well as architectural design changes. The modified design that we will show now was reviewed and approved by both the planning department and by Buff. The project preserved a sufficient number of street trees to satisfy the Public Works Code, and equally important, or even more important, preserves 2 viable planting sites, and that was pointed out to us by Ms. Nawberry, and we appreciate that very much. The project is updated to conform to the Bureau's recommendation, removing the center tree. And this optimizes tree spacing for now and mitigates future impact by allowing tree replacement should that ever be needed. As Ms. Nawberry pointed out, there is unhealthy tree spacing today, and the proposed alignment of street trees creates a more healthy, sustainable environment for these existing trees. Also, the proposal allows for the foundation replacement to meet modern safety standards. Built in 1904, the home's foundation is brick and needs to be replaced. The current number of trees with their required construction tree protection zones, in combination with the Muni bus line, do not allow for machinery to enter the basement to create the new concrete foundation that is required by code. The proposed tree configuration would allow access to the property frontage from the right-of-way. Lastly, the planning department approved design aligns with historical planning and neighborhood interests. This slide shows the existing street frontage along 3160, and in the 40-foot frontage, 2 street trees are required. Right now, of course, there are 3. Even after the removal of 1, the property will be code compliant. This slide shows the Bureau approved spacing and configuration that Ms. Nawberry showed us earlier.
30 seconds.
We've worked closely with both planning and Buff to conform to the recommendation to remove number 2. In the future, should one of the trees die, the spacing allows for replacement. In conclusion, the current approved proposal preserves a sufficient number of trees and aligns with both Department of Public Works and planning requirements. Also, thank you to Ms. Nawberry for your offer to install larger landscape area as an option to avoid the in lieu fee. We will study that in relation to the infrastructural requirements below the sidewalk. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Are there any members of the public who wish to make comment? If there are no comments for this item, I will close the item.
I'm sorry, I was multitasking. I do have we have two hands. I just
Hello,
let me see, did I do the right one?
am I,
Go ahead, Mr. Nolte.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I feel that this hearing is not relevant because the appeal number 25-004 is going to be heard in front of the Board of Appeals, which was filed 1/21/2025. And there it says, quote unquote, that the permit is null and void and held until the hearing date in March. So therefore, you cannot have this hearing and you cannot remove this tree. So that nullifies your jurisdiction, because that is the whole purpose of this is a garage, and now it's being heard by the Board of Appeals. So therefore, you should not be hearing this hearing, and it should be removed from this agenda. You do not have jurisdiction over the Board of Appeals. So thank you very much, and I hope you can clarify that and get it straight that this is not the appropriate time to be hearing this hearing. And also, I'm sure that the attorney for the appellant will weigh in at some point too. Thank you.
It's too bad this hearing does not have an attorney on its staff, but obviously Robert's rules and this hearing is not a valid hearing. So therefore, I would kindly ask the hearing officer to table this item or to have it taken off the item. And I would also probably admonish the staff for putting it on the agenda for not following what should been done with this item because it's the permit. And that's what I made up, that this permit has been now heard twice. And the first time has not been resolved. So there needs to be clarification on how to resolve this in the future. And this item needs to be tabled as per Robert's rules. I don't know what that's up to the hearing officer how they run these meetings, but based on Robert's rules, this item needs to be tabled because it's out of order. And I suggest the staff to understand the rules of the city too. So we'll see you at the Board of Appeals. Everybody, except for the hearing officer that's here tonight.
Thank you. Any other public comments on this item?
I did see one more hand. Hold on, I'm trying to get it. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Lance Carnes. Hi, Susan. Been a long time. Yeah, we see a lot of these projects coming through where people want to take out a tree so they can put a garage underneath their property. It increases the value of the property immensely to do this. And unfortunately, it removes a tree from our urban canopy. I wondered if the applicant would agree to plant another tree, either in the neighborhood or on their property, to replace the one that was taken out. So also, I'm kind of a database wonk. I have copies of the Public Works database of trees, and when I read these, each tree in the database has a number and ID, which is unique to every tree in the city. I'm sure Susan has to deal with these regularly.
Mr. Carnes, excuse me, your sound is going in and out. We are hearing some of your statement, but not fully. Can you speak into the mic?
Okay, I'll try to do
There
that. Is better?
There you go. Thank you very much.
Okay, yeah. So when I read this listing here, it just mentioned removal of one street tree next to 3160 Jackson. When I look in the database, there are 3 street trees at that address. Site 1 is tree ID 125113. Street tree 2 is 125114. And street tree site number 3 is street tree 125115. You can save a lot of time if you qualify these things accurately in the listing. So those are my comments. I'd be happy to help out if the staff has trouble finding which tree is which in the database. It's not hard to do, and just let me know.
Thank you.
There are no
Oh,
more hands at this time.
Great. I will now close this item and make my recommendations to the director. The next item on today's agenda is order number 211348. May I have Public Works make its presentation?
Yes, so this is for 2655 Bush Street. And it's the removal of 3 street trees with replacement by the owner adjacent to 2655 Bush. And the true removal permit number is 795150. And staff approved the removal and the public protested. I will say we actually required the removal. We notified the applicant and required them to remove these trees because they didn't root properly. As you can see that they're leaning into the road on Bush Street, and Bush Street can be a pretty fast, high traffic road. Yeah, luckily there's cars parked here, but they're not rooted. They're slowly failing into the road. So we decided that because these were part of a development project, that we signed off just around 2017. So they didn't really meet establishment after 2017. So we determined that the property owner was still responsible for getting these trees established and that they weren't established. So we'd actually required them to remove the trees and required the removal replacement application. There's a lot of mechanical damage on the underside of the trees where the trees have been hit from cars on the roadway. And the building, which is an old project and it's been signed off and complete, to be very clear, these were just the trees that we required afterward, and we signed off on them because they were fine at the time. They were planted to grade, they were staked, but I don't know if the rootstock was just poor. They didn't fully root, and that's why they're failing like this. And so our inspector is going to work with the project to make sure that they get good rootstock. We'll often just get on a video call and send us photo of the tree you got, or we'll send them the best management practices for planting trees. The newer standard is to shave the root ball on all sides so that the roots send out new shoots. So we'll make sure that they replant with an appropriate root stock, and as a condition of the removal permit, and effectively it's a condition of their previous building permit. And they've agreed to do that. They understand their requirements to maintain the trees as per the building permit. So that's why they submitted the tree removal application. And of course, we approved it because we required the tree removal application. So it's really the base there, like there's how they're kind of falling over. They're falling over slowly. It's a slow failure. Every year we get those super saturated rains and they just fall farther and farther. And you could cut off that one limb to the right, but then you'd end up with a Chinese elm with extremely poor structure. And these trees are relatively young. And I think the best way forward is to just let them plant new trees so we can get new trees with better rootstock established and growing quickly while we still have time, rather than waiting for these to get larger and more established with poor structure and end up with limb failures that necessitate the removal of these trees. And they will be similar or larger stature trees. So this is another one of the, so that's the main stem. It's growing out toward the road. It lacks the clearance. So, eventually if, for say they repaved Bush Street, they would move all the traffic to the curb and every single vehicle would be hitting this tree. So we try to obtain the minimum clearance over the road of 14 feet in order to prevent limb strikes. Essentially, if a tree doesn't meet that roadway clearance, we become responsible for vehicle damage. And more importantly, we don't want people to get injured if branches drop into the road through windows. We've seen some interesting and unfortunate things happen with trees that lack clearance over the road. So these trees are young. We think it's a good idea to replace them now and replace them with similar fast-growing trees that have better structure and get better establishment. And we're happy that the project has agreed to replace the trees as we required it. So here's another one. I mean, you can tell the base here it hasn't really, the main stem hasn't grown vertically, so it's continuing to fail. If you see a bend and it starts to grow perfectly vertically, then you can know that it has corrected its growth, but the lean won't correct itself, which means it's continually failing with the weight of the canopy. So this one has a limb strike. Again, like they're pretty young. So that's why we approved the removal and why we actually required it. And then the applicant couldn't make it, so I have his statement. So that's the end of my presentation. And we'll move to the applicant comment, which I will present for him. And I'll set a timer for the required 2 minutes.
Oh, Sharice can take care of that. It'll be 3
Okay,
minutes.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. Now we have the applicant or applicant or appellate speak, please.
So, okay, so good afternoon. I hope this message finds you well. I'm writing in regard to the upcoming remote public hearing scheduled for Monday, January 27th, 2025 at 5:30 under Public Works Order 211348. On behalf of myself and the Board of Directors, I want to express our concerns regarding the hazardous nature of the leaning trees identified for removal. These trees present a significant risk as their instability poses a danger to both vehicles and pedestrians passing by. If one of these were to fall, it would cause substantial damage to the property, or more concerningly, result in injury to individuals. While we fully support the replacement of these trees to maintain the aesthetic and environmental contributions they provide, we strongly advocate for the removal of the unstable trees as soon as possible to mitigate any potential risks. And then unfortunately, due to a previously scheduled board meeting, I'm unable to attend the hearing. However, I kindly request that the email be considered by my official written statement regarding the matter, as I have not received any information about rescheduling because they contacted us this morning. I trust that the Bureau of Urban Forestry will give this matter the careful consideration it deserves and prioritize public safety while upholding the city's tree management standards. And they said that we can contact them. Further clarification is required, and as the hearing officer will let you make that determination. That is the end of the applicant comment.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public who wish to make comments at this time?
Good evening. This is John Nolte. Couple of things I already see just looking at the pictures that you provided that one, the basins are not completely filled. They should be up to where the top of those bricks are. So that is one problem already with all the plots. And so this, and since this is a condo association, I assume, therefore the condo association is not maintaining its trees on its property. So that I think there should be more issues to be dealt with here. Next issue is then, we were talking about 3 trees, and you're saying that these trees were, when they were planted when the new development was developed. Therefore, I didn't hear anything about replacement size of the bark of these trees, so I would suggest, since these, whatever, these small trees that were planted, because obviously it took them, as you said, 2007, whatever the year, 17, whatever it was, when they were planted, went to into the street, that a bigger box size should go in, so therefore mitigate this from ever happening again, because probably what's happening really is that the wind is bouncing off the street, off the tree, off the building, which would make a wind tunnels, make these trees move that way. So I think people don't understand that the wind in these corridors, and so the building that's taller than these trees creates these problems. You just assume it's the tree just falling into the street, but no, it's actually probably the wind bouncing off the side of the building. So I would suggest either 24 or 36 box size appropriate for this site to mitigate the issues from the first planting. Obviously, if they didn't learn from the first planting, they should learn from the second one by putting in a bigger size. Therefore, this shouldn't happen again. And so that would mitigate this issue, and also help with the carbon loss by the removal of these 3 trees. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Michael Nolte, and it's clear that the trees, there must have been some, there needs to be mitigation about why the trees failed, and assuming that the trees failed, I mean, when several trees fail all the same way, there's more to it than just the bulbs and what was mentioned. Also, it's clear that the right of way, the sidewalk needs to be clearly fixed, as well as the tree basins, and so that should be part of the permit. And additionally, there should be an actual time frame that these trees need to be replaced by. It's just because it's an order doesn't mean they have a year to do it. And it's just out of curiosity. I mean, since we get somebody who's supposed to be a professional, when's the appropriate time to plant and replant trees? I mean, you can do it anytime you like, but this is now going to be the rainy season, and we're seeing the floods down in LA, just an example. I mean, it's now the rainy season. Is that the appropriate time to plant the trees? Because I mean, obviously, when you plant a tree, you also add, some, kind of food to for the tree, and if it all gets washed away, when you replant the tree, if you add any kind of food, in the planting mixture, it gets all washed away, or doesn't get actually into the tree. So, just out of curiosity, when's the appropriate times to plant trees and to make them actually, function to the best, because this is San Francisco. This should be an ongoing issue about anytime we plant trees in San Francisco or replant trees or plant trees. There should be certain seasons where it will take better. And maybe the other part is the Chinese elm maybe was not the right choice for for this location. I don't know why. I mean, there's probably plenty of choices.
30
maybe
seconds.
So maybe another choice maybe is more appropriate, and then also the a bigger box size and width of the tree will make up for the loss for having to replant these trees. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, my name is Lance Carnes. Hear me okay? I took a look at a Google Street View of this plot, probably from about a year or so ago. And there are trees planted. It's like a condo complex, and there's trees planted along the sidewalk. And they all look pretty good, except for one tree is practically dead. I don't know why that happened. But it looks like when they originally planted, they were upright. And I don't know what happened to cause them to be. And once again, the notice reads to consider the hazard removal of three tree trees with replacement by owner.
I think you're cutting out a little.
Okay. Okay. Is this better?
That's better.
Okay. Yeah. So you call them hazard trees. That's a fairly stringent requirement there. Anyway, and once again, the trees aren't the database does have an exact location for each tree. It'd be good if you guys actually looked those up and recorded them in here rather than just saying removal of 3 trees, replacement next to da da da. There's actually 4 trees at that address, and apparently one is not mentioned here. And again, I'll be happy to help out with identifying those, show you guys how to pull out of the database. That's the end of my comment.
Mr. Burgos, I see no other hands at this time.
Thank you. If there are no more comments for this item, I will close the item and will make my recommendations to the director. That item is closed. The next item on today's agenda is order number 211349. May I have Public Works make its presentation?
Yes, so this is at 1308 Leavenworth Street and is to consider the removal of 2 street trees without replacement adjacent to 1308 Leavenworth, and we approved the removals and the public protested. And I should clarify that when we say without replacement for a Public Works initiated tree removal, that we indicate in the record that the tree we must relocate a replacement, and that goes on our deferred replacement list. So the reason why we did not approve replacement is because of this tree on the far right. We anticipated filling in the space that these 2 smaller trees are in. Ficus are really large stature trees. Their canopies can be as broad as 45 feet. So, and the one on the right is very healthy. So it's gonna have a lot of room to grow and expand into this space. So we don't want to plant a tree underneath the canopy of the existing tree on the right. So that's why we did not approve replacements for these 2 trees. And you can see the 2 trees on the left are very close together. That's partially why the middle one is leaning away from the one on the right. It grows toward the light, but then it's kind of suppressed by the one on the far left here, the ID 73076. So they have a severe lean in the right of way, and there's actually some root damage from past sidewalk repair. We have to maintain a 6-foot path of travel in the right of way, and you can see how the sidewalk, it's like 2 different colors. That the sidewalk had been repaired at some point, and the root pruning had occurred. And they also have pretty poor structure, and there are past failures here. We've circled them. And then there's a service drop that's being strained by the growth that's being directed away from the trees on the right. So here's a example of the poor unions that are likely to fail. And when they fail, they split and they tear down the bark. So the tree on the right, it's more the main unions that have the poor failure, whereas this tree on the left that we're not removing, that union is like lower down. But here it's the main union that's like more exposed to the wind or to the environment, whereas this one, it's not quite as exposed. We'll have to see what happens after we remove these two trees. But these ones had the more severe structure and the higher likelihood of failure. And these two trees experienced the more extensive root pruning as compared to the tree on the left that we're not removing. And then the tree on the far right here, 73076, that one is leaning toward into the public right of way and in the path of travel. And it's actually kind of continuing to grow in that direction. And with that past root pruning and weight on that side of the canopy, we're concerned that there's an elevated risk of whole tree failure and not just limb failure. And we had that happen in front of our office. Unfortunately, we had a row of 5 ficus that we were holding on to, and then one by one each was kind of taken out by the microburst that happened 2 years ago. But those are much larger than these two here. Yeah, and then this middle tree is leaning way out into the road, so it's at risk of being struck by a vehicle and taken down completely. And in the direction of the vehicle travel, if this one goes down, it'll take down the one on the right too. And you can see that the largest limb is not the main limb, but it's a limb that's growing out laterally. And so that's that indicates a much higher likelihood of failure, that when the limb that's not the main limb is larger than 1/2 or 1/3 of the main limb, it's indicates that it's a limb that is more likely to fail, because the weight of this limb exceeds the capacity of the main stem to support this tree. And it's the interior of this limb on the right is bare, so there's more end weight on this limb, so it's cantilevered out, and that's basically the 50% of the tree or more. So when a tree has a bunch of end weight, it provides a lot more leverage for limb failure. So effectively, we approve the removal of these two trees on the right due to their structure, their instability, and potential for root failure and being hit by vehicles. And then not the tree on the left, because we determined that that one was more structurally sound. But it does look like we will need to keep an eye on it once we remove these two trees on the right. But we didn't want to just remove all 3 at once, because these 2 trees were the worst. And you can tell that you can see that the tree on the far right is more upright. Its structure is pretty bad too, but we could maybe reduce it over time. The 2 trees on the left have a lot more bare canopy inside, which means there's no laterals to reduce it to. And that means there's not a living branch to prune back to that can assume the role of the main canopy. So once you cut back the weight of the tree, you'll end up with like a bare coat rack tree, and it may not survive that. So we don't want to top trees just to try to save them, because that is not a guarantee if the tree will survive. And it's pretty poor tree management when the resource could be otherwise spent managing healthier trees. And then you can see this middle tree has a pretty poor main union. So that concludes the removal for 1308 Leavenworth. It's a removal without replacement, but deferred, will end up on the deferred replacement list by the Bureau of Urban Forestry.
Thank you, Susan. Is the applicant or appellant here to speak? you would have 3 minutes to speak.
I don't see the hand for an applicant.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public who wish to make comments?
Yes, we have two. Just a moment.
Good evening, this is Joe Nolte again. I find this very interesting since Susan brought up the trees at Mission Street that were removed, and those were also ficus trees. And then I actually watched and saw what was going on with them too. And that some were taken out, they weren't even destroyed by the winds, as she quote unquote said. And also, if you look at the neighborhood, the immediate neighborhood around this, where this site is at, you'll see more ficus trees on on both blocks, south, north, east, and west of the streets. This is a corner lot. So when we have successfully, the city has managed to trim trees on 13th Street, 14th Street, Hayes Valley, 24th Street. Like we haven't done it before, started to trim the trees so we could get them under control, so the ficus trees, and save them. So all I hear is that the leaning is causing problems, and therefore we should remove them. And this is the thing about, since it's the biggest, it's the top 10 trees planted in San Francisco, and they seem to want to be going after these, and they want the Bureau of Urban Forestry won't even admit how many trees that they have taken out that are ficus trees throughout the city, and when I request reports. So therefore, I don't feel this very comfortable that they continually, with notice or without notice, take out ficus trees just for the heck of it. And also, in the storm that we had in December, there were like 300 trees citywide. There were, or 400 or so that were damaged. I again don't know if they were all street trees, back trees, or park trees, whatever. But then it goes for what was said on public comment about that. We're not, again, we're losing all these trees, but we're not planting 300 or 400, to replace the trees we just were destroyed during that one storm. So that is my real issue, is that you just keep on adding to the pot of how many trees are being taken out. And these are older trees. They've been around for 40, 50 years. And then you just want to take them out because you feel uncomfortable with them. But you're systematically doing the same thing with the other ones around the city, noticing us or not noticing the public. Anyway, so I feel
30
very
seconds.
comfortable about your practices about ficus trees. Thank you.
During the presentation, there was no mention of any in lieu fee that would be generated. And if there was an in lieu fee, how much? And I think that should have been part of the presentation. All I heard was they weren't being replaced. So I think those are my comments. Also, I guess maybe I should also make a comment that the public, couple years ago, over 10,000 people signed a petition to save ficus in San Francisco. And that is an active petition that still exists. The city has kind of waged war on certain kinds of trees, and specifically ficus trees. And I think the hearing officer should be made aware of that when we see these come up. Obviously, we've had recent storms, and I don't think anywhere in the presentation was it mentioned that there was storm damage on these trees. If there was, I'm sure the staff would have said so, because that would have been, they add to the pile of things they want to say it's wrong with the tree. They would just add more, when they talk about serious safety concerns. Additionally, when you have the bottom limbs of the trees, they're going to be the first ones that are going to get hit, because they're going to be the ones closest to where the cars are. So when they end up saying along the down perimeter of the bottom of the tree that's under like 5 feet, I happen to be 6 foot tall, so I appreciate the fact that I need to be able to walk under the trees without getting my head hit. So the same thing goes for a car or anything else, a truck that happens to go by. It's gonna hit all the limbs that are the lower limbs and cause damage to any tree if they happen to have lower limbs. So making a point, oh well, we had these fractures or problems. Well, that's just the life of a tree. And to make it sound like it's something special, nope, it's not. It's just a reality. The life of a tree is going to get injured. And boo-hoo.
3 seconds.
So, that's how that goes. Thank you.
Any other public comments at this time?
Yeah, my name is Lance Carnes again. One of the trees mentioned here, it doesn't exist in the database. You called it 41756. There is in fact a 41757 and a 41758, no 56. I think, accuracy, especially in public notices, is important. And I think we need to get on top of that. Also, I think these trees, you might look at them under Google Street View. You can see them a couple years ago when they were first planted, and then look at them now and see what happened. When they're first planted, they're usually pretty upright, look good, and then something happens. I guess they get whacked by a car or whatever. But that's a good tool to use as well. So that's it for my comments. Thank you.
No other hands at this time.
Thank you. If there are no more comments for this item, I'll close the items and make my recommendations to the director. This
Senator,
item
can I
is-
provide a minor clarification? There is no applicant for this. This is a Public Works initiated removal.
Thank you.
I hope that helps anybody who was confused about any sort of mitigation.
Thank you, Susan. This item is now closed. The next item on today's agenda is order number 211350. May I have Public Works make its presentation?
Okay, yeah, this is another Public Works initiated removal. It came to us because the sidewalk was severely damaged. And then the tree, we examined it, we let the cement shop remove the concrete so that we could look at the roots, and unfortunately you can see where the garage is, that it is right in line with like half the trunk. So basically their curb cut had been completely uplifted this way, and they hadn't actually been able to get into their garage. We tried to see if we could repair it, but we couldn't basically remove someone's curb cut. People get those permitted, and they effectively get that legislated in their deed. So we can't just take someone's curb cut effectively. So the tree is also really close to this other tree on the left. So that's why we said we couldn't replace it at this time. If that tree on the left did fall or die for some reason, we could replace at this location. Not right where that Corymbia is, but shifted over. But currently there's not enough space to replant. Because you can see that the bottle brush on the left is completely suppressed by the corymbia. So we'll see what happens if it recovers from being suppressed by this corymbia. And if not, then perhaps we'll replace it, you know, if it dies. And this isn't an IRA funded area, so we could fund that replacement if needed. But at this time, you know, we're only removing the tree that we have to remove because the sidewalk is also very narrow. So the root pruning required to repair the sidewalk necessitated a removal. The reason why it looks like this is because we didn't want to just post the tree for removal without seeing what was under the concrete. Sometimes you can tell right away that the uplifted concrete, the species of tree, the height, that you'll have to remove a tree before you even remove concrete. But in this case, we wanted to see if there were extra hidden roots that could assume the structural integrity of this corymbia, and there aren't any roots that, you know, could take the place of like that main buttress root. So unfortunately, to restore the sidewalk as it was before, we'll have to remove this tree. And it is a Public Works initiated removal, and it was a severely damaged sidewalk at the time. Behind on the photo on the right, where they're forming, that was severely uplifted. And you can see basically the tree had become girdled by the concrete. That's why it's kind of rounded over. So it didn't really have any structural roots on that side either. And again, on the left, it's like majority of the root flare or the trunk flare. It's not even full on structural roots. So it's really unfortunate because we really don't want to remove large stature trees like this, that, you know, we don't want to have to initiate the removal of large stature trees that we have to then remove and mitigate. It's a loss for us. So we definitely did not post this tree removal joyfully. We really regret this removal, and also the fact that it can't be replaced right away, but maybe someday if that tree on the left perishes. Yeah, so that is 381 Wild. It's a tree removal initiated by the Bureau of Urban Forestry. It will be added to our deferred replacement list, and hopefully planted around the area nearby soon because it falls in our IRA planting area. That's it.
Thank you, Susan. Since this is a Public Works project, there's no applicant or appellant, am I assuming? Great, thank you. Are there any members of the public who wish to make comments?
Yes, it's very interesting how you, some of the pictures are dated, some are not. And then also the other issue is you don't show the second garage to the building. So therefore, how do we even know that they use this garage? And third, so there's two garages to the building already. And now you just want to mitigate, as you point out, the deed or whatever. But see, you know, they built the driveways, whatever, and the tree, you know, now it's gotten a foot or so into the path of a driveway, but they have two driveways which are fairly large, the door, so they could accommodate like four cars in that, in that park, or just even with just park on the between the street and the sidewalk. So, you know, when you say that you're going to take out a tree, because, we're initiating it because now we have an issue with the sidewalk, and we see this when we dig up the sidewalk. See, this is the problem about when you give the city money to deal with sidewalks, somehow they magically want to deal with the trees too. And so you combine the two, and now you come up with this idea of, wow, when we start fixing the sidewalks, we're gonna look at the roots, and then we're gonna give an excuse of why to take out a tree too, so we can use that money too. So this is a prime example of how the city is looking at trees that don't have to be taken out, but they want to, they can enlarge the basin, you know, and then if the property owner doesn't want to use the second, no, I didn't hear the property owner saying anything, and since now it's Buff saying it, how do we even know that they use the second garage at all? And also, we're supposed to be moving to electric cars and so forth, so they're not gonna have 4 electric cars to this building, because I'm pretty sure it's not that many people living in it. So, you know, because, you know, that's the other thing when we talk about housing, you know, in the 1950s, we've only increased the housing stock, but doubled it. But the population of San Francisco has only gone up by 5%. And we've gone from 20,000 to 400,000 units. And so now we want an additional 80 or more thousand to the city, but the population hasn't gone up a lot. But they want to, you know, keep on building housing. So we're finding all these interesting
30
statistics about
seconds.
what's really going on in the city. It's again, people with property, holding on to their property and just, you know, having fun with it, and then at the expense of the public. So I don't appreciate this kind of a presentation every time when it's the slides are too pro Buff, not the public. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Michael Nolte, and I consider myself a citizen planner. A citizen planner is somebody that has a lot of has done dealt with a lot of planning in the city and county of San Francisco. I've belonged to a lot of different neighborhood associations and various planning organizations over the years. And you know, one of the things I've learned is that it costs the city a lot less money to remove a tree than it does to plant a tree, because somebody's going to have to pay for 3 years of watering, and therefore it takes you know, a contract to actually keep the tree there and make it grow for over a period of time. So city wants to save money, so it's going to save money by just killing a tree. It's better to kill it than make it make a live tree, because it costs a lot longer. I mean, it costs a lot more to maintain a live tree. So there's that cost effectiveness. So it's, you know, this is how a lot of times the bean counters start thinking, well, how can we save money on our budget? So then there's the other part that just kind of interesting. It puts on, oh, we'll have a deferred, we have a deferred, you know, planting, you know, we'll, you know, defer this to plant it some other time. Well, I wonder how many trees are put on that list in the city and county of San Francisco. How many trees do we have on this waiting list to be planted in San Francisco? And, you know, when we know that there's no pot of money to plant those trees. So and you can see the person nodding her head. So, you know, saying we're going to have deferred planting, you know, that's like holding your breath. And, you know, whimsically you say, well, you know, some point, sometime we might see a new tree there, but when and where, you know, that's, you know, anybody's guess. You know, if I was part of the neighborhood association in this district, I would just say, you know, we like to have beautification in our neighborhood and we like to maintain it, and we do whatever we can to maintain the beautification of our neighborhood, and at any cost, because we know that beautification helps. You know, if I was a kid, I'd like to climb that tree. If I was, it was a hot day, I would like to have the shade of that tree. If I wanted to hear about
30 seconds.
I wanted to know about the environment, I'd like to hear the birds that nest on that tree. All right, thank you.
Hello, Lance Carnes here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so this whole thing we just looked at is indicated as being on 381 Wild Street. It's not on 381 Wild Street. It's on 381 Wild Avenue, which is a whole different part of the city. And indicate one tree is going to be taken out. There are 3 trees at the site, 381 Wild Avenue. And I just like to see some more accuracy. We've got a database that's pretty good. One other thing in the database that is not used, there's a slot for tree removal date. So whenever you go in and take out trees, you don't fill in that removal date. So when you do an inventory of the database, just go scan through. You can't tell which trees are really there, which trees were there one time and got removed. So I think we ought to need to do another probably whole survey of the city to get this thing up to date. And then once that's filled in, we can actually tell how many real trees we have on the ground. So just once more, I think accuracy and precision in indicating which trees we're talking about is important.
There are no more hands at this time.
Thank you. If there are no more comments for this item, I'll close the item and make my recommendations to the director. This item is now closed. The next item on today's agenda is order number 211351. May I have Public Works make its presentation?
Yes, so this is to consider the removal of 3 street trees with replacement adjacent to 50 United Nations Plaza. And staff approved removal and the public protested. And this is for Lance. The trees are listed in our database as 43 United Nations Plaza, tree 4, tree ID 250263, tree 8, tree ID 250267, and tree 14, tree ID 250273. And the species are Platanus hispanica. They're a hybrid London plane tree of some kind. There's many hybrids. So the reason why we posted the removal of these trees is because they're in severe decline. And the majority of the upper canopy is dead. So Brecken Park is basically like activating that quadrant. So they're trying to bring new people there. They're still brainstorming the plan, but they're basically activating this plaza and trying to bring the public back in and populate this area again. And the idea is to remove any dead or declining trees and replace them with living, healthy trees. And so Brecken Park and Public Works are jointly managing this project. Because the trees are Public Works trees, but the plaza is more or less maintained by Brecken Park. And so they'll be replanting these trees in February. So this has already been in the works. And let's see. And so this is another one of the trees. It's in decline. So there's a lot of sprouting on the lower canopy, and that's usually kind of like a last ditch stress response. When you don't see growth at the tips and shoots, that's when the tree is beginning to senesce. And so here's another angle, and it's just that this variety of London plane tree, the bloodgood tree isn't very adapted to our climate. They were planted a long time ago. London plane trees were the hot new thing for landscape architects to plant everywhere, and not every variety does well in every climate. But the new variety that we're planting, the Columbia, that one is a lot more tolerant to our climate. Let's see, and there's like a broken limb on the left here. So it's this tree's been through it. It's been through a lot. So we are proposing to remove them. And here's tree 8. This one has, and I understand that this is, it's becoming dormant. But these tips, when observed in the wind, they don't sway. They kind of shake. And when that happens, you know they're dead. There's no new buds on them. And you can tell just from the branching structure, the canopy is very small. It's in severe decline, and again, the majority of the upper canopy is dead. And not just in the deciduous phase, but like this is dead branching, and then the rest of the brown leaves you see are in the deciduous phase. And again, different angle here, and this is in November. Let's see here. So I do want to address the fact that, of course, there were some stumps found, because some of the trees were in far worse condition than the trees that we're showing you here. So we posted them as emergency because they had bark sloughing off and they were cracking. And this is about to become a densely populated area, we hope, with the reactivation of UN Plaza. And you can see the tree on the left doesn't even have bark on it anymore. So a lot of times a dead tree that doesn't have water and a dead canopy on top, like sometimes it doesn't have the weight to fail until it gets to this point of advanced decay, and then pieces of it start falling off. And also the roots below ground start to decay and can no longer hold up the tree. So like a freshly dead tree, as long as its roots are intact, like may not fail right away, but a tree that's been dead a long time, that is an elevated and imminent risk of failure. So we did post for 24 hours and remove 9 of the trees as emergency. And so there are stumps there, and we listed the tree IDs, and we can provide them in an email if anybody asks. I see that we wrote 262 twice, so I'll have to get clarification on that. I think it's supposed to say 263. So we do want to be clear that we did remove some in advance, and we kept note of which ones, and all of the trees, 9 of these and the previous 3 trees, will be replaced by Rec and Park in February. So the hazard trees, we post them as hazard trees because they're in decline, and we want to bring in more people in this area. And so declining trees with higher number of targets elevate that risk to hazard tree. But because we've had to delay the removals for this hearing, the hazard trees have now stood for about 6 months, and they are actually now fully dead. Not just deciduous, like we checked the branches and they're rigid when the wind. So this is kind of becoming more urgent because again, we're trying to activate the space and plant new trees, and the previously posted declining trees are now fully dead. So we are actually asking that the hearing officer issue the decision quickly on this case, if possible. And we're going to replace, we're planting 14 24-inch box size Platanus hispanica, the Columbia variety, as we mentioned, and that is a lot more fog and drought tolerant and wind tolerant in it. It's resistant to anthracnose. So yeah, that concludes 50 UN Plaza. I hope that makes sense. Let me know if you have any questions to be clarified. And that is the last case and the last slide.
Thank you, Susan. Do we have any public comment to this at this time?
Well, Susan, I want to congratulate you on a thorough presentation, but you kind of missed out a couple of things here. First off, I don't, again, I'm not down there every day since your office is only a couple blocks away, so you can be. So you're saying that the trees what'd you say, 19, or what, wait, we're gonna replace 14. Okay, so you're gonna replace 14. So, and that's basically what was there, in the last 20+ years. So, and you also say here 24 inch box site, but you forgot to say that there actually, see that black fences you showed. Well, oh, you're putting something in there. And I saw the picture of that, and therefore, and I was there and I took pictures of that. And they're putting something inside where the 7 or the front row was at. So why are you putting the Park and Rec putting something into the location that you're saying that you took out the front row of the 7 and left the back row of the 3 you were at? So my question now is to you, how come these back 3 trees that are still there, for whatever reason you say, because they were hazardous and the other ones were emergency removal? Well, how come is currently no tree protection around the 3 trees, while they have that fence there, and you have a workman putting in already stuff there? So that's got nothing to do with planting trees. So, but for the next 60 days, you got something else going on in that on that square there at 43 UN Plaza. So that I find very interesting, and also what happened to the rest of the plaza and the other trees that were planted there when the UN Plaza was put in. You had a couple hundred, over whatever 100 trees. There was a number that I saw. And also, and all the planning that I saw for UN Plaza, the different entities that took place on that, they all quote unquote said, keep the trees. Well, I'm not hearing keeping the trees. I hear about taking them out, and you have taken other ones out. And then further down there toward the next block down, in front of the next building down, you have three trees right there that have not been replaced. And I said in my protest, quote unquote, don't take out these trees until you deal with the other 3 trees down next to the next building there. That's again under your jurisdiction. It has not
30
been.
seconds.
So when they reactivated this place, they put all these nice little trees around the fountain in pots. Those aren't trees. And then in front of this, they also put those lights from that were in Golden Gate Park and another section of this. So this activation stuff, it's kind of hairy in my head about having light trees and so forth that Rec and Park wants to put in. And the activation is not really what they're doing. They're just having fun as a park and have no accountability.
Next.
Well, I have to take a deep breath here. My name is Michael Nolte, and again, a citizen planner, but also I'm with the North of Market Planning Coalition, the Alliance for Better District 6. I actually get notices from the planning department. This area has been a mess with first the Park and Rec decided to take out Farmers Market and saying, well, we just don't want to we don't have the money or the time or the ability to manage the Farmers Market. And so not only dealt with the Farmers Market, also dealt with the gift section. So they had to move them to another section. So when you when you say you want to activate, I thought we're at $800 million deficit city budget has. So where's this money coming from? And if this Park and Rec has oodles of money, then it needs to be cut, the budget, because activating means somebody's spending money or has a slush fund to be able to activate. Trees are one thing because they're part of the public realm. That's another thing to spend money on activation. So that means that somehow we have money for to make certain things look better, while the rest of the city looks like a dump. We need to be dealing with potholes and all the other things that the city needs to be fixed up. We need better community service. We're taking away our bus stops. So you're doing one thing, but you're not doing the rest. So we have a deficit, and you're talking about activation here. So something doesn't sound right. Again, it sounds like like I said at the beginning, Park and Rec is just one of the other entities that take away trees and don't account for them, because they don't have an active inventory of the trees they remove. And here's an example of it. Removing trees. And, that's a shame. So, I think that there needs to be more accountability. And the, the neighborhood is upset about the loss of our small
30
businesses that
seconds.
were part of they were part of farmers market, because you actually heard it when you tried to move it. And there's no accountability what Park and Rec is doing here. And there are others. There's several CBDs and other entities not understanding what this the city's doing, because there's no outreach. This is the first I'm hearing about it. So there's no outreach by Park and Rec. They're
Howdy there, Lance Carnes here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Nod your head. Okay, thank you. So this whole thing about 50 UN Plaza and 43 UN Plaza
Oh,
database.
no, I can't hear you.
Okay.
Oh,
The
that's
database,
better.
is it okay?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, the database shows this as 43 UN Plaza. Someone wrote it in as 50 UN Plaza, which is not accurate. There is something called the property address, which is like 50 Polk Street, I think. So someone confused 50 Polk with 50 UN Plaza and came up with totally the wrong address. So I'm glad you corrected that, at least to 43, which corresponds to the database. Mr. Nolte asked me to look at the 3 trees that were marked for removal on the here you are, tree 4, 8, 14. I went to them. Each one of them indicated it was hazard removal. Hazard removal, if you look in Article 17, means that it's not something you can wait around for. You have to take care of it pretty soon. Emergency removal is totally misused by Public Works. Emergency removal means that there's a tree hanging over the mayor's Mercedes-Benz, and it's going to crush the roof in a minute, and you have to get right on it. You have to you don't post the tree as emergency removal. You just call the emergency vehicles, you get it done, and then later on you can explain why you had to do an emergency removal. So in the past, you've posted trees as your emergency removals, but it's just a total goes against the laws of the city, the Article 17. So the 3 trees that are indicated here were all posted as hazard trees, and they looked like they weren't going to fall over to me, but I guess at your discretion you can do that. Anyway, so let's every tree has a exact location. In fact, it has GPS points. I can pull trees out of the database and plot them on a Google map, and I think you guys should be able to do that as well. It's not hard to do.
30 seconds.
Yeah, so just let me know. I'll come down and we can have a cup of coffee, and I'll show you how to pull stuff out of your database, which is fairly complete. So thank you.
There are no more hands, Mr. Burgos.
Thank you. If there are no more comments for this item, I'll close the item and make my recommendations to the director. This item is now closed. Are there any public comments on any of the items on the agenda? If you have spoken, you will not be allowed to speak again. This is for those who might have come late or did not have a chance to speak. If there are no more public comments, I am closing this hearing. This hearing is now closed.